On September 11, 2025, a declaration shook the world stage. Standing before his nation, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu made a statement that ended years of speculation. There will be no Palestinian state. With those words, a debate that had stretched across decades seemed to reach its breaking point. Yet beyond politics, many felt something deeper stir, a sense that an ancient echo was rising once more. For centuries, prophecy has been spoken of in hushed tones and bold sermons alike. And now, on a date already heavy with history, September 11th carried a new kind of weight. Not tied to towers of steel, but to stones far older, the stones of Jerusalem. Netanyahu's stance had long been clear. No two-state solution, no division of Jerusalem, no surrender of Jewish sovereignty. But never before had he declared it with such finality. In that moment, one door was firmly closed, while another seemed to swing open the door that leads to the Temple Mount. The scriptures speak of this mountain. Prophets warned of conflict, sacrifice, and a temple once destroyed that would one day rise again. For generations, the question lingered. When? Could it be now, in 2025, that history and prophecy begin to converge? Picture the scene. The most contested piece of ground on earth. Once home to Solomon's magnificent temple, later rebuilt by Herod, before Roman legions reduced it to rubble. And today, the site of the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. It is here on this mountain that many believe the final chapters of history will unfold. Some welcomed Netanyahu's announcement as a victory, a moment of fulfillment for promises made to Israel long ago. Others received it with unease, sensing it could ignite tensions that reach far beyond politics. And still others simply watched in silence, aware that something deeper than laws or treaties was shifting. So we are left to ask, is this the turning point when prophecy collides with politics? To understand the weight of this moment, we must step back in time 10 years earlier, to 2015. Back then, Israel stood at a crossroads. Global powers were pressing for a two-state solution, a vision of Israel and a Palestinian state side by side, with Jerusalem divided between them. But Netanyahu, just as firmly then as now, made a vow. As long as I am Prime Minister, there will never be a Palestinian state. At first, critics dismissed it as election rhetoric. But over time, it became more than a political stance. It was the cornerstone of his leadership. That vow meant the land of Israel would remain whole, settlements would not be surrendered, and Jerusalem would remain undivided, the eternal capital of the Jewish people. For Netanyahu and his supporters, the reasons were clear. Security, to prevent threats from forming at Israel's doorstep. Heritage, to preserve the covenant tied to the land of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Survival, to ensure the Jewish people would never again face exile from their homeland. And now, in 2025, Netanyahu declared that this vow had been fulfilled. Not just symbolically, but legally and politically. The idea of a Palestinian state was not simply blocked, it was formally taken off the table. The symbolism is striking. For decades, leaders spoke of peace talks, negotiations, and the elusive two-state dream. And now, that vision has vanished. The closing of one path has opened another, directing the world's attention toward the most contested site of all, the Temple Mount. In a single move, Netanyahu consolidated sovereignty, silenced the two-state vision, and placed Jerusalem once again at the very center of history. And it is here, on this sacred mountain, where prophecy insists that the story of humanity will reach its climax. Some celebrate this as triumph. Others warn it may spark greater conflict. But one truth remains. History has shifted course. And so, the world is left asking, if the two-state vision is gone, what comes next? What fills the vacuum left behind? The answer may not be found in parliaments or United Nations chambers, but in something far older, in the prayers of rabbis, the scriptures of prophets, and the longings of faith. After his announcement, Prime Minister Netanyahu did not retreat into politics. He did not stand in celebration with allies. Instead, cameras captured him walking to the Western Wall, Israel's holiest site of prayer. Kippah on his head, his hand pressed against the ancient stones, his eyes closed in silent reflection. The image was striking. A man known for strategy and hard decisions suddenly appeared not only as a leader, but as a pilgrim, and he was not alone. Standing beside him were Israel's religious leaders, rabbis, guardians of tradition, and even members of the Sanhedrin, a body re-established in recent decades as a symbolic continuation of the ancient council that once guided Jewish law and temple ritual. To much of the world, they are little known. But to many Jews, they carry weight, representing a nation's spiritual heartbeat, a yearning for restoration. Why does this matter? Because Netanyahu, though a secular statesman, cannot ignore the rabbis. No decision regarding Jerusalem, and certainly not the Temple Mount, can bypass their influence. And in recent years, their voices have grown louder. The temple must be rebuilt. For centuries, Jewish prayer ended with the words, "Next year in Jerusalem." But now, whispers turn toward, "Next year on the Temple Mount." By praying at the wall alongside these leaders, Netanyahu sent a message, not necessarily a political decision, but a symbolic alignment with Israel's prophetic destiny. In that moment, the line between politics and prophecy blurred. The soldier-statesman was seen side by side with men who spoke of sacrifices, priesthood, and restoration, and the world noticed. For Palestinians, it felt less like politics and more like a threat to their future. For Muslims, seeing Israel's leader alongside the Sanhedrin sparked unease. Would this challenge the sanctity of the Dome of the Rock? For many Christians, it was electrifying, a possible step toward events foretold in Scripture. This convergence suggests that the fate of Jerusalem will not be decided only at negotiation tables, but also in places of worship, at altars and pulpits. And when politics and prophecy walk together, history often accelerates. So the question rises, was this moment simply symbolic, a politician seeking spiritual legitimacy, or was it the beginning of something far greater, preparing the way for the temple itself? Either way, a threshold had been crossed, and the world was watching, because the very mention of a third temple stirs deep emotions across faiths. It is not just a Jewish hope. It is a prophetic fault line that runs through three of the world's great religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. For Jews, the temple means redemption. The Messiah, a son of David, will come, restoring Israel, bringing peace and establishing God's kingdom. Every stone rebuilt is a step closer to that promise. For Christians, however, Scripture points to another possibility. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul wrote of a deceiver who would exalt himself above God, seated in the temple. To them, the temple rising again signals not immediate redemption, but deception, a world leader who offers false peace before betraying humanity. And for Muslims, the Temple Mount is already sacred, home to the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holiest site in Islam. The idea of overshadowing or replacing these shrines is seen as an existential threat, sparking fears of deep conflict. Three perspectives, three powerful narratives, each different, yet all agreeing on one thing. If the temple rises again, it will be one of the most consequential moments in human history. This is why Netanyahu's words on September 11th carried such weight. By declaring the two-state path closed, he shifted the spotlight firmly onto Jerusalem's most contested ground. If control over the Temple Mount grows stronger in Israel's hands, then the debate will no longer be theoretical. It will be immediate. It will be decisive. And so the daring question lingers, chilling both believers and skeptics. Who will appear first? Will it be the Messiah, long-awaited hope of Israel? Will it be the Antichrist, the deceiver foretold in Christian prophecy? Or will it be conflict itself, a storm that engulfs the region before either figure is revealed? One thing is clear: the Temple Mount is no ordinary hill of stone. It is the stage on which faith, politics, and prophecy converge, and the entire world is watching. Jerusalem is more than a city. It is the crossroads of prophecy, the meeting place where faith and politics collide. And when that collision comes, the world will not stand by as a spectator. Every nation, every people will feel the tremors. Perhaps that is why prophecy has always lingered over Jerusalem like a shadow. Two figures stand at the center of the debate: the Messiah and the Antichrist. Two destinies, both tied to the same sacred ground. And the question of who comes first may not remain theory forever. It may be answered in the unfolding events of our own lifetime. This is why so many are watching Jerusalem closely, because what happens there may one day shape the future of the entire world. Netanyahu's words on September 11, 2025, did not only make headlines, they stirred echoes of prophecy that stretch back thousands of years. The Bible does not leave Jerusalem's future in silence. It speaks clearly of temples, covenants, and warnings of great trials at the end of the age. The first key comes from the prophet Daniel. In chapter 9, verse 27, Daniel describes a mysterious 7-year covenant, an agreement that begins with promise but breaks apart halfway through. In the middle of those years, Daniel says, sacrifices will be stopped, and in the temple, something shocking will take place, an abomination that causes desolation. This verse has been studied for centuries. Some scholars see the covenant as political, others as spiritual. Some imagine the figure behind it as a peacemaker, others as a deceiver. But one truth is clear: Daniel ties it directly to the temple and to a moment of betrayal that unleashes devastation. Centuries later, another vision comes, this time to the Apostle John on the island of Patmos. In Revelation 11, John is told, "Go and measure the temple of God and the altar, and count the worshippers there. But exclude the outer court. It has been given to the Gentiles, and they will trample the holy city for 42 months. Pause and consider that. John was writing after Rome had destroyed the Second Temple, yet he was told to measure another, a future temple that must exist for his prophecy to come true. And he was told Jerusalem would be trampled by the nations for 42 months, 3.5 years, the exact midpoint of Daniel 7. Then we hear the voice of Jesus himself, recorded in Matthew 24. So when you see standing in the holy place the abomination that causes desolation, spoken of through the prophet Daniel, let the reader understand, then let those who are in Judea flee to the mountains." Notice the urgency. Jesus does not treat the temple as distant history, but as a future signpost of coming tribulation. He connects his own prophecy with Daniel's vision, pointing to the same desecration in the same holy place. Three voices: Daniel, John, Jesus, all pointing to the temple as the stage upon which the final drama of history will unfold. And yet here lies the mystery. Each religion reads these verses differently. For Jews, the temple is a throne of hope, the place where the Messiah will come to restore Israel and bring peace. For Christians, it is a warning, the place where the Antichrist will appear before Christ returns. For Muslims, it is a danger, a challenge to their own sacred shrines on the Mount, including the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Different interpretations, yet all eyes turn to the same mountain: Jerusalem, the Temple Mount. Perhaps this is why Netanyahu's words in 2025 feel heavier than ordinary politics. They touch something deeper because they move the world closer to the conditions these scriptures describe. Think about it. For Daniel's covenant to be broken, there must first be a covenant. For John's temple to be measured, there must first be a temple. For Jesus' warning about desecration to occur, there must first be a holy place rebuilt. This suggests history is not drifting aimlessly, it is moving toward an appointment. An appointment written long ago, inscribed in prophecy, unfolding step by step in the land of Israel. So when Netanyahu declares there will be no Palestinian state, he may see it as a political promise fulfilled. But in the language of prophecy, it may point to something far greater, something that transcends politics, reaching into the destiny of nations. He may be preparing the stage for the next act of biblical history. And that leads us back to the haunting question: who will step onto that stage first? The Messiah who redeems, or the Antichrist who deceives? The Bible does not give us a date, but it does give us a warning. Watch, pray, be ready. Because one thing is clear: the temple will rise again. And when it does, prophecy will move from the pages of Scripture into living history. The question is no longer what has been said. The question is what comes next. History never stops at a speech. It unfolds, step by step, before our very eyes. And now, in the shadow of Netanyahu's words, Jerusalem's future feels charged with prophetic possibility. Imagine this. Israel now holds firm control over Jerusalem. The two-state debate, long the obsession of diplomats and negotiators, is over. For the first time in decades, Israel can shape the city's destiny without the pretense of shared sovereignty. That freedom raises a daring possibility, the rebuilding of the temple. For years, such talk was dismissed as impossible, too explosive to even consider. After all, the Temple Mount is home to the Dome of the Rock, and the Al-Aqsa Mosque sites sacred to more than 1 billion Muslims worldwide. To alter that balance could risk igniting unrest across the region. And yet, whispers grow louder. Quiet groups in Israel prepare priestly garments, train descendants of the Levites in ritual practice, and even draw up architectural plans for a future sanctuary. For them, this is not imagination, it is preparation. Some point to significant anniversaries. In 1947, the United Nations voted to partition the land, a milestone in Israel's rebirth. In 1967, during the Six-Day War, Israel reclaimed Jerusalem and the Temple Mount, though daily control remained with Islamic authorities. 80 years from 1947 brings us to 2027, a number some view as the close of one biblical generation. Others watch the Jubilee cycles of 50 years. From 1967 to 2017 was one cycle. From 2017 to 2067 is another. And here we stand in the very middle, 2025, 2026, 2027. Years that, for some, glow with prophetic significance. Picture one path. Israel, emboldened by Netanyahu's stance, asserts stronger control over the Temple Mount. Protests erupt. Global powers intervene. In the chaos, a figure emerges, offering peace, compromise, perhaps even a covenant of 7 years that seems to solve the unsolvable. Or picture another. Religious pressure builds within Israel itself. Grassroots movements grow impatient. The Sanhedrin demands action. And after a crisis, perhaps war, perhaps upheaval, the foundation stone is finally laid. The temple begins to rise. In either scenario, the world will not remain silent. For many Muslims, the move would feel like an assault on their sacred shrines. For Christians, it would be a prophetic sign, some rejoicing, others trembling. The scriptures converge with chilling clarity. Daniel speaks of a covenant and an abomination. John measures a temple that does not yet exist. Jesus warns of a desecration in the holy place. And all of it centers on the Temple Mount. So here we are, a generation watching ancient words align with modern headlines. We cannot ignore it. We cannot dismiss it. History is moving faster than ever toward prophecy. But one question still remains. If the temple is rebuilt, who will appear first? The Messiah or the Antichrist? That question is not just for scholars. It is for all of us. Because whatever happens on that mountain will shape not only the destiny of nations, but the destiny of every soul. For secular leaders, it would be a political earthquake, feared as a spark that could ignite a global firestorm. Here is the reality. Prophecy insists the temple will stand again. The question is not if, but when and at what cost. If it happens soon, millions of Jews from around the world could return to Jerusalem, not just for heritage, but for worship. The third temple could become a rallying point, drawing the nation together. Or it could ignite a storm of conflict, what the book of Revelation calls Armageddon. One act, one building, one mountain, and the destiny of nations could shift in a single moment. So here we stand on the edge of something historic. The headlines call it politics. Analysts call it strategy, but prophecy calls it destiny. Think of what we have witnessed. On September 11, 2025, Benjamin Netanyahu declared the end of the two-state solution. A vow made 10 years ago, now fulfilled. And in that moment, Jerusalem's future was thrust into sharper focus than ever before. This is not just another policy shift. It is the collision of politics, prophecy, and faith. For Jews, it stirs the hope of redemption. For Christians, it awakens the warning of deception. For Muslims, it threatens the sanctity of their holy places. And for the rest of the world, it is a reminder that Jerusalem is not just a distant city, it is the stage upon which history itself may climax. So I leave you with this. What do you believe? Will the temple open the way to redemption, or will it unleash deception before the end? Comment your thoughts below. Share this message so that others can reflect, watch, and prepare. Because the signs unfolding in our time may be the very ones foretold long ago. We are not just reading prophecy, we are living it, and the next chapter is about to be written. As we step back and look at the bigger picture, one truth emerges: Jerusalem is no longer just Israel's concern. It has become the heartbeat of the world. What happens on its narrow streets and sacred stones sends ripples through every nation. Global reactions. In Washington, leaders weigh their response carefully. The United States has long stood as Israel's strongest ally, yet it has also been the chief sponsor of peace talks. For decades, American presidents have spoken of the two-state solution as the only viable path to peace. And now, with Netanyahu's words, that path is gone. Diplomats scramble, torn between loyalty to Israel and pressure from the international community. In Europe, the reaction is mixed. Some governments issue statements of concern, warning that the death of the two-state vision will destabilize the region. Others, quietly, breathe a sigh of relief, believing negotiations had been stuck in endless cycles with no real progress. The European Union finds itself split, unable to speak with one voice, as prophecy moves faster than politics. Meanwhile, in the Arab world, the announcement sparks outrage. For many Muslim nations, Jerusalem is not only a political cause but a sacred trust. To declare the Palestinian dream finished feels like more than a diplomatic insult. It is a spiritual wound. Street protests flare. Speeches thunder in parliaments and mosques. And yet, behind the scenes, some leaders pause. They know that open conflict with Israel in the 21st century carries heavy risks. Energy markets, military alliances, and fragile economies hang in the balance. Farther east in Asia, the response is quieter but no less significant. Nations like China and India, both with growing influence in the Middle East, watch closely. For them, Jerusalem is not primarily about prophecy, but about power. Whoever controls the city, and the alliances it represents, holds influence over trade routes, energy pipelines, and global security. This convergence of faith, politics, and power reveals something extraordinary. The fate of a city smaller than most world capitals has the potential to shake the entire globe. But prophecy in our time carries another dimension that ancient prophets could never have imagined: technology. When Daniel, John, and Jesus spoke of future events, their audiences could scarcely imagine a world where news traveled instantly across continents. Today, however, the moment anything happens on the Temple Mount, it is streamed live to billions of phones around the planet. Imagine the day construction begins on a third temple. Drones circling overhead, cameras fixed on every stone laid, live streams watched by millions in real time. Within seconds, reactions explode across social media. Jews rejoice, Muslims protest, Christians debate, and the entire world becomes a digital witness. In Revelation, John speaks of events that all the world will see. For centuries, scholars wondered how that could be possible. Now the answer is clear. Technology ensures that prophecy will not only unfold, it will be broadcast. And technology plays another role as well: artificial intelligence, surveillance, and digital control. Some prophecy experts warn that the rise of global monitoring could one day be linked to the figure known as the Antichrist, who exalts himself and demands allegiance. Could a rebuilt temple become the stage not only for worship, but for global systems of control? It is a chilling thought, and one that makes the Temple Mount more than a local issue. It makes it the epicenter of a digital age confrontation between faith and power. Beyond politics and technology, there is a deeper dimension, a spiritual battle that has played out for millennia. Jerusalem has been conquered, destroyed, rebuilt, and fought over more than any other city on earth. Empires have risen and fallen, yet the city remains. Why? Because it is more than stone and soil. It is a symbol. For Jews, it is the eternal capital, promised by God to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. For Christians, it is the city where Jesus died and rose again, and where his return is foretold. For Muslims, it is the site of Muhammad's night journey and one of the holiest places in Islam. 3 faiths, 3 billion people, all bound to the same small mountain. This explains why Netanyahu's declaration feels like more than policy. It feels like a step in a drama larger than any government. Because in prophecy, the closer Jerusalem moves to its destiny, the sharper the conflict becomes. Light and darkness, hope and fear, redemption and deception. So what could unfold in the years ahead? There are several possibilities. The peace covenant. A world leader could emerge, offering a bold new peace deal. It may promise safety for Israel, recognition from Arab neighbors, and perhaps even permission to build the temple alongside existing shrines. For a time, the world celebrates. But as Daniel warns, halfway through, the covenant breaks and betrayal is revealed. The grassroots push. Alternatively, pressure could come from within Israel itself. As more Jews return to their ancestral land, voices for a rebuilt temple grow louder. Quiet preparation turns into public demand. And then, in a moment of crisis, action is taken. A foundation stone is laid, and the world erupts in response. The unexpected catalyst. History is often shaped not by long negotiations, but by sudden shocks. A war, a terror attack, or an international crisis could flip the balance. Out of chaos, leaders seize opportunity. In such a moment, what once seemed impossible becomes reality. In each of these paths, one truth is the same. The world will not ignore it. Every nation, every religion, every media outlet will be drawn into the storm swirling around Jerusalem. Prophecy speaks not only of events but of timing. Generations, jubilees, appointed seasons. The sense many have today is that the clock is ticking louder. From the rebirth of Israel in 1948 to the recapture of Jerusalem in 1967, to Netanyahu's declaration in 2025, history feels like it is moving in measured steps. Could the next step be the temple itself? If so, then the prophecies of Daniel, John, and Jesus are closer than ever before. And so we return to the haunting question. If the temple rises, who will appear first? Will it be the Messiah, bringing peace, redemption, and the fulfillment of Israel's hope? Or will it be the Antichrist, offering false promises only to deceive the nations? The answer remains hidden. But prophecy urges us to watch, to pray, and to be ready. Because one day soon, what has been read in Scripture will become visible in history. We stand at a threshold unlike any before. Technology ensures that no event in Jerusalem will remain hidden. Global politics ensures that every decision will carry worldwide consequences. And prophecy ensures that history is moving toward an appointment already written. The Temple Mount is not just an ancient hill of stone. It is the fuse of prophecy, and the match may already have been struck. So the question comes to each of us, not just scholars or leaders, but ordinary people. What do you believe? Because when the stones of Jerusalem shake, the whole world will feel it. And when the temple rises, history will never be the same again.